1851. Setting out from the town of Ophir just 3 years after the discovery of gold, prospectors from the state of Georgia traveled a short 3 miles to the stream beds of Auburn Ravine. Panning, they discovered what they had been searching for, gold. New towns were born: Gold Hill, Virginiatown, and Oro. In 1853, along Dottie's Ravine, the Peter brothers, using a common rocker, recovered over $10,000 in gold. Summer, the dry season. Streams and rivers shrink. Mining, so dependent on abundant water flow, comes to a halt. Until the fall rains come again, little work can be done. Water companies were quickly formed to divert water to Gold Hill and surrounding towns. In 1853, construction on the McMartin Ditch began. Its purpose was to bring water from Sailor's Ravine to Gold Hill. About the same time, O.K. Lethings constructed a canal taking water from Auburn Ravine, just above McMartin's Ditch. The Auburn and Bear River Water and Mining Company protested, claiming their water rights to the water. California statehood was only 3 years old. The water wars had begun. The water companies, exhausted from endless disputes, eventually settled their differences through mergers. In 1884, South Yuba Company bought out Bear River, and they themselves were bought out by Pacific Gas and Electric. Between 1913 and 1917, PG&E constructed the Weiss Powerhouse on Auburn Ravine. Renovated in 1987, the powerhouse is still in use today. If you are curious on how electric power was made in the 19th century, a visit to the Folsom Powerhouse is a must. On the American River, Horatio Livermore constructed the Folsom Powerhouse. The powerhouse became operational in July of 1895 and supplied power to the Sacramento Valley until retired in 1952. Today, the powerhouse is a state park. A visit is well worth your time. With a guaranteed source of water, mining operations increased. Larger, more efficient equipment came into use. One of the most destructive methods was hydraulic mining. Invented by the ancient Romans, whole mountains could be washed away. Entire watersheds were being destroyed. Above Auburn, in the town of Dutch Flats, the transcontinental rail line almost collapsed. As the river bottoms filled with mining tailings, the floodplain spread out. River channels changed course. Steamboats could no longer navigate the rivers. Sacramento and Marysville experienced massive floods. 1884, United States District Court, Judge Lorenzo Sawyer ruled that hydraulic mining was a public and private nuisance. Hydraulic mining was now illegal. Imported water from the Bear River once again ran clean from Auburn to Rockland. Panning for gold gave way to hard rock underground mining operations. Soon the Sierra foothills became dotted with mines. Whether through hard rock mining or hydraulic mining, the gold had to be separated from the gravel. 24 hours per day, steel hammers crushed the gravel into finer and finer grains of sand. The next step in separating the gold from the gravel would have a major impact on our watershed today and far into the future. Miners called the pulverized gravel flour gold. Water was added to the gold flour and extruded onto especially treated copper plates. The slurry was then mixed with mercury. But why add mercury? Mercury has a unique property in that when mercury comes in contact with almost any metal, an amalgam is formed. Gold dissolves into the mercury, similar to salt dissolving into water. Because the gold and mercury amalgam is very heavy, it would sink to the bottom of the slurry, collecting on the metal copper plates. The unwanted waste would then be washed away to be piled into tailings. With the waste washed away, workers would then rake the gray amalgam off the copper plates in preparation for the final step. Mercury boils at a much lower temperature than gold. By heating the amalgam, the mercury could be boiled off, leaving the gold behind. The mercury, which was piped off, would be cooled for reuse. Between 1859 and 1981, the mercury mines of San Benito and Santa Clara counties exported 220 million pounds of mercury to the gold mines of California. In the process of separating the gold from the mercury, not all the mercury was recovered. The United States Geologic Survey has estimated that 10 to 30% of the neurotoxin mercury used in the refining process was never recovered. Up to 8 million pounds of toxic mercury escaped from the tailings into our watershed, contaminating our food chain. "27 miles east of the city of Auburn, just off the I-80, is the town of Dutch Flat. This all but forgotten town played an important role in the development of western Placer County. Dutch Flat was founded in 1851 by Joseph and Charles Dornbach. From 1854 to 1882, Dutch Flat was noted for its rich hydraulic gold mines. By 1860, the town had grown to be the largest city in population in Placer County. Chinese laborers alone numbered over 2,000 residents. It was through Dutch Flat that Theodore Judah would find his successful route for the Transcontinental Railroad. And it was the water from the nearby Bear River which would be transported through ditches and flumes into the towns of Auburn, Newcastle, Penryn, Loomis, and Rockland. In Dutch Flat today, after more than a century, one can still see the toxic legacy of the 49er gold rush. Tailings created by the iron hammers which crushed the rocks into gold flour released arsenic and asbestos. Into this toxic brew, mercury was added. The unwanted slurry was then flushed into holding ponds and finally released through pipes into our streams. "40 miles west of Dutch Flat, in the foothill towns, the winds of economic change were afoot. The veins of gold quickly ran out, and just as quickly the towns of Gold Hill and Virginiatown faded. Once there were 444 residents living in Gold Hill, 2 hotels, a school, a Masonic lodge. Today, only the cemetery, a road marker, and the Grange Hall remain. Two miles north of Gold Hill was Virginiatown. The roadside marker read, Virginiatown, founded in 1851. Over 2,000 miners worked the rich deposits. Captain John Bristow built California's first railroad, 1852, carrying pay dirt to Auburn Ravine, a distance of 1 mile. Virginiatown is the site of Philip Armour's and George Aldrich's butcher shop, said to have led to the founding of famous Chicago Armour Meatpacking Company. Captain Bristow's train was supposed to travel upstream 20 miles, bringing pay dirt down to Virginiatown. His plan evaporated, as did the town. January 8, 1863, groundbreaking for the Central Pacific Railroad, Oakland to Promontory Point, Utah. With major stops in Roseville, Rockland, Newcastle, Auburn, and Colfax, the Central Pacific Railroad would have a major impact on the Sierra Nevada foothill communities. The railroad brought new environmental pressures on the foothills. The early trains burned wood. Their boilers were filled with water. The rail ties were treated with creosote, and repair shops were lax with waste. As the gold rush faded, granite rock and quartz quarries expanded. California was growing, and the demand for granite building blocks increased. The landscape in the towns of Rocklin, Penryn, and Ophir became dotted with quarries. In the fall of 1864, Mr. Griffith, a native of Wales, established a quarry near the site, which was later to supply high-quality granite, including portions of the California Capitol building. In 1861, A. Hathaway opened Rocklin's first quarry. Granite from this site was also used in the construction of California's Capitol building. The Central Pacific Railroad reached Rocklin in April of 1864. The very first freight shipped were 3 carloads of granite from this site. As the internal combustion engine began to replace the horse-driven vehicles, concrete began to replace granite streets and curbs. One by one, the quarries began to close. Big Gun Quarry opened in September 1864. It too supplied granite for the construction of California's state capitol. It ceased operation in 2005. Big Gun was the last of 62 operating Rocklin quarries. The Rocklin City Council has approved sale of the Big Gun Quarry and its historic work sheds. 150 years of history may soon be bulldozed for redevelopment.
Yes, my name is Heather and Willis, and I work down at Pioneer Mining Supplies. And I want to share a little bit about the effects of mining on the environment. A lot of times people are under the impression that mining is very harmful. But what they fail to realize is that a lot of times that by putting the ban on dredging, now there's nothing out there to actually turn the gravels over for the salmon so they can lay their eggs and repopulate. Between the dams being built, the massive decrease in the amount of fresh water we have coming in from rains, and the banning on dredging, now we have all these sediment ponds that are building up really thick. So it's basically going to make it impossible for the next generations of salmon to turn around and populate. There's a lot of beneficial effects that the miners do provide that have been ignored. A lot of people don't realize this, but the government currently is getting all types of grants for money to turn around and do dredging, yet people that basically like you and me used to pay money and permitting fees to go out and do the same thing. So it was actually a source of revenue for the government. So the thing is when you look at miners, we're not the same people we were back in the 1800s. Back in the 1800s, we used a lot of different forms of mining that were very destructive. But there were so many regulations that were brought into place that protected it came to a point where actually dredging and mining helps benefit the waterways, especially in times of severe drought like we have today.
Visit our website, drycreekconservancy.org. Learn more about our American River watershed through our other educational videos. We can be found on the Dry Creek Conservancy website or on YouTube, www.youtube.com/user/MichaelStark1 or youtube.com/user/RosevilleTV.